You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to another episode of the 40 Thrive Podcast. If you're new to this show, what's up, newbie? Welcome. I'm psyched you're here. So who is the 40 Thrive Podcast for? If you're a woman in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who is not ready to let life pass you by, you're in the right place. If you're ready to shake things up and start living more of the life you really want, but maybe you need a little support, we've got you. Or maybe you're thinking, I want more, but I have no idea more of what? Yep, this show was created especially for you. Thank you so much for being here. In today's episode, I'm talking with the one and only Stacy Kaiser. Stacy is a licensed psychotherapist, relationship expert, and author of How to Be a Grown-Up, the 10 Secret Skills Everyone Needs to Know. Stacy's a media personality you may have seen on VH1's Celebrity Fit Club or Lifetime's Diet Tribe, or maybe even Investigation Discovery's Fatal Vows. She's the parenting expert on the Today Show and Good Morning America, and a regular guest expert on Steve Harvey and the Doctors. You've probably seen her on one of these cajillion places that she's been over the past several years. Stacy's also worked with the FBI, LA Fire Department, and the LA Unified School District, but her most coveted role is as my guest on today's 40 Thrive podcast. Take a listen. Stacy Kaiser, welcome to the 40 Thrive podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
Girl, how has it taken this long?
I don't know. I listened to all the other ones.
You have?
I have. I'm so proud.
Oh,
it's
my
good stuff.
goodness.
I'm glad to be here.
That's a little daunting when a therapist is listening. Am I effed up?
No, you're just normal like the rest of us.
Oh, good. Now we can move forward. So before we get into all of the amazing advice that you can give the 40 Thrive audience and community, I kind of want to just go back and get your journey, because you became a psychotherapist. Was that right out of college? Did you just keep going with schooling, or did you go back?
I did. I went straight from college into my master's program. And here was the weird thing. I started my master's program at the end of September, and on November 1st, they were like, you're going to be a therapist today.
What?
And they put me in a room with someone. And I was like, I have been in school now for about a month. I have no idea what I was doing. But I wore a suit so that I would look a little older.
That's always the answer, right?
But it was scary. It was really, it was scary. But that was like almost 25 years ago, which is crazy.
Whoa. So obviously that person knew that you were a student and that you weren't like...
Yes, they knew that. And then we could run out of the room if we needed to get help.
Oh, that's
for
good.
Ourselves.
Wow. So it was sort of like an internship while you were...
That's what it was. You have to earn 3,000 hours in order to become licensed. So that was hour one.
Did you run out of the room looking for help?
Thankfully, I didn't have to do that.
That's good. And then did you go directly into private practice after?
No, I was trained at a place called Friends of the Family, which is a community crisis center. And I had a small private practice in there while I worked there doing all kinds of stuff, dealing with battered women, teen pregnancy, abusive people, people who have suffered from trauma. I mean, I literally had everything from a kid who was kidnapped by his father to an attorney who was upset that his season tickets got taken away from him by his company. I saw it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
And let me guess, one of them seemed to heal a little bit faster than the other.
It was not the season ticket holder. He had a rough time with that. His whole identity was connected to those tickets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder where he is now. Sitting at Dodger Stadium.
He probably went and got another job where they have a luxury box.
Yeah, he works there doing peanuts just so he can be good. Anyway, so you did that. And then when did you move into like the entertainment side where you became this on-air guru?
Well, apparently it was about 15 years ago, only I thought it was only 10. I was just recently informed that it's like 50% more than I thought. And I really just fell into it. A friend of mine was working on a pilot, and he knew I did public speaking. I do a lot of, public speaking. And he said, do you have any video on your speeches? And I said, no, because I never took anything because I didn't want to look at myself. I was so uncomfortable with the idea of being on camera, which is really ironic. So he and his wife helped me make a video.
Wow.
We brought a bunch of girlfriends together, and they talked about their problems, and we recorded it. And I got the job. And literally the next thing after that, I just started being on television. It was crazy.
Wow. And what was that first job?
The Larry Elder Show.
Really?
Yep.
At Telepictures.
Yep.
Yes, which, for those of you following along, where I worked at the time. Actually, my husband was an editor on that show.
Okay. Well, there you go. We go way back then, apparently. It was 15 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. That's actually when I left to have my first baby. So, that's why we didn't cross paths, because we were talking before. How the heck do we know each other?
Yeah, we're not sure about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't the Larry Elder Show. But by the way, that show was only on for a couple of months. But the amazing thing that happened was that everybody that left called me wherever they went.
Right.
And so it was just this amazing thing where, I thank you, Larry Elder. I'm sorry your show didn't go on longer, but then it just exploded after that.
Right. And then you did a lot of daytime stuff, but you also do investigation discovery.
Yes, I have a show called Fatal Vows on Investigation Discovery. The new season will start this fall.
If someone told you when you were first getting into this field that, basically your bread and butter one day would be Fatal Vows, what would you have said?
I would have been surprised. It's really funny because I love crime. I'm on CNN, headline news and stuff. I'm riveted by crime. But it's always this funny thing because people are like, oh, do you have a show now? I'm like, yes. Well, what is your show? It's about spouses who kill each other. Silence. Always silence after that. So it's an interesting show. And it is amazing because it's based on true stories. Literally how many spouses who killed each other.
Right.
It's disturbing.
But I think what's really interesting as far as, people might think like a TV therapist that it's not real but I think that you actually bring a sense of responsibility to a lot of programming that might otherwise go off the rails.
Well, thank you. I always try and think about the people that are watching because to me, although they're, following this riveting story of somebody who ended up killing someone else, there's red flags that all of us miss along the way. There's relationship issues that we all tackle, and most of us, thankfully, don't end up either killing someone or being killed. But I don't know. I feel a sense of responsibility to teach people how to do their relationships better.
Okay. I was going to, and we are going to talk about some of the common issues of women over 40 and how we can help. But let's stop for a second because there are a lot of women out there who are dating after divorce, who maybe haven't gotten into a relationship and maybe they're online dating, or what are some of those red flags?
Well, that's a good question. And by the way, I was divorced or am divorced. And so I did do the dating after divorce thing. And the red flags are typically things where something inside of you says, this just doesn't seem right. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was dating somebody, and she was never allowed to go to his house. Now, that's a little strange, isn't it?
A little bit.
Well, it turns out it's because there was someone else living there. He was married. And to me, it was a red flag the whole way, but she just kept sort of taking, his stories about why, like, my house is a mess, I'm embarrassed, and she accepted that. So it's big things like that. And then it's also little red flags just about people who are inconsiderate. So someone just told me a story about how they ended up staying the night at the person's house. So that one wasn't married, which is good. And
yay!
And she had to leave at 5 a.m, and it was dark. And she had to walk to her car, which was, it's in LA, and sometimes you have to park far away. And he just didn't even get out of bed to make sure she would be safe. And she kept saying as she was walking out the door, well, do you want me to at least call you when I get to my car so you know I'm safe? And he was like, yeah, you can call me if you want. And to me, he's not worried about her safety.
Right.
And so it's things like that.
Yeah. And so he might not be necessarily a psychopath. He's just an a-hole.
Yeah, pretty much. Totally. I always say
the first guy is a sociopath, maybe.
Yes,
but the
you're
second
supposed
one
to be on your best behavior at the beginning,
right? And
so if you're screwing up in the first few months, like what's going to happen in a year or 3 years or 5 years?
Totally.
You're in trouble.
And what about the guy who was married? So I recently talked to somebody who I'm helping create a podcast, and she was completely blindsided. I can't reveal the whole story right now, but she was completely blindsided by this double life thing. She was married to this guy. So are there tells?
I bet you if you asked her if in hindsight there was anything that seemed
she
weird,
still says no.
There must be something. Like if I would nitpick with her, because sometimes it's just simply that they don't turn their phone face up or they never leave it. It's always with them. A red flag could be someone who they literally take the phone to the bathroom at 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
Which a few women I've had that happen say to me, I didn't realize that was a red flag. I'm like, okay.
I thought he was watching porn.
That's basically exactly what it is. It's like, okay, we have a night.
Okay, I'm kidding, honey. I wasn't talking about you.
So it's things related to the phone. It's unexplained absences where you don't know where the person is. Oftentimes, though, when a situation does happen where a person really doesn't know, it's because the person has a lot of business trips. And one of the red flags I see with business trips is people who are not willing to say what hotel they're staying at. Because they forget to tell you, or that they don't check in late at night. They say goodnight to you at 4:00 p.m. And then the evening, whatever, they're doing whatever they're doing.
Right. That's interesting. The whole world of dating over 40, 50, 60, it's definitely not for the weak. That's for sure.
No, but you know what? I think if you've tried and you're married and it isn't working and you can't be happy and fulfilled, and especially if you have children and now you're role modeling a bad relationship and misery and arguing, then I think the alternative of having to date is way better.
Yeah.
Because at least you have a second chance to upgrade.
Right. And hopefully, I notice with any mistakes I make in life, obviously not in relationships, I've been married a long time, but it takes less time for me to get up back on my feet after the mistake. So like say when you're dating and you meet somebody and they're just so wrong for you, maybe it'll take less time for you to see it and make the cut them out, as you go.
I like to think we get wiser with our age,
or at least
time.
At least recover from heartbreak maybe a little bit faster, or be able to bounce back because you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think as you get to be over 40, the hope is that you have other, things that give you a life.
Right.
That you have friendships or a job or activities that you enjoy. And if you don't, you need to make that stuff happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, let's make them happen now. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about that. So you, not only are you on Fatal Vows, I have to say it like that, Fatal Vows, you also have groups and private clients and still do your traditional therapy. Yes. Do you see common challenges among your clients who are women over 40?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I see nowadays is people who feel like in some ways they've lost themselves. Not completely necessarily, but, raising kids, working, being in a relationship. Sometimes you are so busy accommodating everyone else and taking care of everyone else that you forget who you are and you stop meeting your own needs. How do you know if that's happened? Maybe just listening to me, you're thinking like, this is me. I don't even meet my own needs anymore. But it's when you start to realize that you're not even doing things that you enjoy, and the things that you used to enjoy, you're not enjoying as much. I have one woman who she loves to cook, and all of a sudden she stopped cooking. And she said, I just don't feel happy. And when you don't feel happy, you don't want to do anything that you would normally do. So I do think that that's one of the biggest issues. And part of what ends up happening to those women is if you do have children and they go off to, their lives, to college, to a job, to get married, you're left thinking like, what do I do?
Right.
And so I always tell women that at this point, you need to make sure that you do have some activities that are really about you. And it doesn't have to mean that you do like a week-long trip with your friends, though that would be nice. But how about one night? Or how about everyone goes to go get a massage together, or a wine night, or having some favorite TV show that you watch that like for me, it's Bravo. And I'm not even promoting Bravo, but literally it's my like dirty little secret. I watch all the shows.
Do you watch it with friends or by yourself or with your boyfriend?
I mean, thankfully, my boyfriend likes Bravo too.
Good.
But before that, it was my private little, like, this is what I watch. And I totally enjoyed it. And hopefully that station will continue on, because I know I'm not the only one who's like that. But the bottom line is it's to find something that you like.
Right.
And that gives you joy.
So cooking was her passion and she just wasn't feeling it. Like, what kind of advice did you give her?
Well, the first thing I did is I said to her, it's really sad that the thing you love doing the most, you stop doing. So let's start looking at why you're depleted. And what I found out is she's been having marital issues. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about, how can you not feel so depleted with your husband? And she has literally been revolving her entire life around her kids. Now, I definitely was the mom. I mean, I still am. I like making my kids breakfast. Mm-hmm. My 23-year-old brought me her laundry the other day.
How sweet.
I like doing that stuff for my kids. But there comes a point where you have to know where the line is too far and you've done too much and you're exhausted. And that was her. She was waking up at 4:00 in the morning to get all the like lunches together and whatever. And I was like, well, what's happening between like 4 and 6:30 when the kids get up? And she said, I don't know. I'm just like doing laundry and cleaning. And to me, she should have been working out or going for a walk or having one quiet cup of coffee. I mean, on one hand, I can look at her and say, all right, in her mind, she thinks she's getting a lot done because no one's awake.
Right.
But then she goes to work.
Yes.
And so there's nothing for her. And so what we talked about is, can you even carve out 5 minutes to sit down at the table with like a magazine or your social media or Jackie's podcast and just have like a moment to breathe?
Yeah.
And she wasn't. And so that was one of the things that we started to talk about is what can she integrate in her life that would give her her moment?
Well, how did she respond to that advice?
I mean, she actually said that she hadn't thought of it. She said she'd gotten in a routine where she was putting herself last. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us. Have you ever heard of the frog in boiling water theory?
I'm not sure.
So if you take a frog and you put it in a pot on the stove in cold water and you start to turn up the heat slowly, it will adapt and adapt and adapt and adapt, and eventually it will explode. Oh. And that is us. I think that just represents a lot of the women that I know. I always say that we have this whole phenomenon where I call it like the I've got it phenomenon. Like, oh, I've got it. I'm fine. I've got it. I've got it. I've got it. And the next thing you know, it's like, I don't have it. Like, I have it. I'm managing my life, but I'm like miserable.
Yes.
Because we acclimate. And it's an amazing gift for us, not the frog. It's great that we can acclimate. It's great, that we can take a lot. But we do lose sight of the fact that it's getting too much. I think that's definitely a female quality.
Absolutely. I could not relate more to that because just this week, my kids were doing some community service over the summer and I was helping them get that done. And, I've got my podcast group going and then there's a potential collaboration I'm doing. And she said, how about 3:00? And I knew in the back of my head that I should not say yes. Don't say yes. Don't say yes. It's just not a good time. It's a crazy day. And I said yes. And so I was in the car, literally picking up boxes of donations in 100-degree temperatures. And I've got my earbuds in waiting for my phone to ring and my phone in my back pocket. And I'm like, oh my gosh, hopefully she won't call until I get this box in the car. And just trying to like balance the whole thing. And then I get in the car and I go, why did you say yes to this 3:00 call? Like, why can't you just say no and do it the next day?
Right, because you can do it.
Yeah.
And you did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that's what I think we say to ourselves, like, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this. And you can.
Yeah.
But it cost you something.
It cost me a lot of sanity.
The thing is, I think those of us that get into a habit of saying yes all the time and we don't listen to the little voice inside of us that says, no, I shouldn't do this,
right,
or it's too much.
I mean, that call is not going to throw it over the edge, but it's indicative of what I do, of how I just, that tipping point, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a big club of people like you because I have that in me. I think most of your listeners do too. We can handle a lot. We can, and so we do. And then we get tired. And then we don't have energy to do stuff for ourselves.
Do you think that the moms of like the 70s and the 80s were like, yes, I've got it. I can do it all. Like, watch me. And then feeling burnt out? Or were they just like, no, do it yourself?
I think that they were like that. I just think that they weren't as aware of it. I think they discussed those types of things. Not all of them. One of the things that I think has happened in our generation is financially, most families require both people to work, or at least one person to work full-time and someone to do something in an assistant
sort of pick
way.
up the slack.
And I think that has that financial stuff that's been going on in our economy has impacted us. And I think it's added to it. But I also think that we've developed these amazing expectations. For example, my mom would make like meatloaf and we ate that. That's what we ate.
Yes, we did.
I am a short order cook. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have like a vegetarian child and she won't eat meatloaf. So if I made meatloaf, she needs like a different meal.
Right.
Right? So
she needs tofu loaf or whatever her.
Exactly. So just things like that, where I just think we try to be more accommodating to the differences within our kids. See, I never really liked meatloaf, and I was forced to eat it, and I wouldn't force my kid to eat meatloaf. And I'm just using that as an example because you would be totally fine if you did force your kid to eat meatloaf. But my point is, I think we do much more customized parenting than I think our parents did, and I think that burdens us as well.
That's such a good point, because I think it was like, take it or leave it. Those are your two options,
Yeah.
And now we're like, oh, do you not want that? And
yeah.
I mean, I have a little bit, I think because I'm one of 13 kids, I still have a eat your damn meatloaf sort of way about me, unless, you're a vegetarian. Like, I'm not that person. I'm not, but if you're avoiding it because it's not a preference, then I'm like, yeah, this is what's for dinner. But if it's like a moral dilemma going on, that's very different. But I think even back then, moral dilemmas wouldn't have even been considered. It'd be like, eat it anyway. I don't care if you're a vegetarian, you know?
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, even if one of my kids didn't like meatloaf, I probably would make them something else.
You would?
Yes.
Why do you think?
Because I didn't like being forced to eat what I didn't want to eat is the real reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I have a brother. Yeah.
Okay. So just the two of you too. So it wasn't like you came from...
Right. It wasn't like your house where there's,
our army.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sometimes notice that I sort of parent as like an army drill sergeant, and I'm like, oh wait, I don't have to do that. I only have 3, not 13. You can actually chill out and be.
It shows you how it like ends up in you, what you were raised with. Like that's what I always say, that you are impacted obviously by how you were raised. And I've rebelled against that with the food. My kids, it's like I'm a short order cook because that wasn't the way I was raised and I didn't like it.
Right. I rebel in other ways. So let's go back to some of the ways that we're not taking care of ourselves. So this isn't just, it's funny. Somebody had said to me the other day, like, oh, I would listen to your show, but I don't have kids. And I said, 40 Thrive is not about parenting. So we just happen to be talking about moms, but moms are not the only ones in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are struggling.
No, and when I brought up the financial thing, it's with or without children. A lot of women I know work now, and when I was growing up, they did not.
Right.
Some did, but not the same quantity of people. And so I do think the work-life balance applies to everyone. You don't have to have kids. And if you aren't working and I still think that we have a hard time balancing it. And I think part of it is because we are, look, I think there's still some challenges for us women, but we kind of can do whatever we want now. And that is amazing. And I think that has opened us up, but I think it also makes us take on too much. And I think that we've been socialized not to feel like it's okay to say no. And we've been socialized, whether we're a parent or not, to worry about other people's feelings. And so we say yes, 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 yes. I have a friend who works full time and does not have kids. And she works like a dog because she doesn't want to say no. And it's the same, and then she's exhausted. So it is the same thing. We have to learn how to say no. We have to learn how to balance our lives and do things that we enjoy.
If we compare women in the 70s or, even 60s, 70s, 80s, it was like you just did the things that you needed to do to survive. And then we got into the 80s and it was like, oh, you can work and you can raise the kids and have the family and you can have all of these things. And then nobody told us that we didn't have to. They just told us we could.
Don't you remember that Anjali commercial?
Yes.
You can bring home the bacon fried up in a pan and never, ever, ever forget you're a woman or something.
Yeah, or never let him forget he's a man.
That was so sexist. I only seem to remember the bring home the bacon fried up in a pan thing.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
It was like you can do all of these things now.
And so now I think we need to learn that there are limits. And I think the next generation is doing a better job of that. But yeah, I think that we overdo things because we know we're capable. And just because you're capable doesn't mean you should say yes.
Exactly. And that's exactly it, because we were told you can do it all, you can have it all, you can, go, 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 go. And so we're like, oh, okay. And we don't know that we can, maybe the pendulum needs to swing a little bit into the middle. And just because we can doesn't mean, like you said, that we should or that we have to. So I want to, all of your patients obviously aren't over 40. And so one of the things that fascinates me is millennials, right?
I have a lot of millennial clients.
They get a bad rap, first of all. But one of the things that I've discovered, so I was working at a job, 5 years ago, and there was an editor and she worked Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And she was probably in her early 30s, and I said, oh, what do you do on Wednesdays? She's like, oh, I don't work on Wednesdays. And I said, oh, do you have kids? No. And I said, well, oh, okay. I didn't.
You're like, what?
I'm like,
what do you do on Wednesdays? Sure. Yeah, what? She relaxes.
Well, she actually said, I feel burnt out at the end of the week if I work 5 days in a row. So I choose to work the 4 days. It works better for my life. And I'm like, who are you? What is this sorcery? Yeah. Like at first I was like, how dare you? And then I'm like, how brilliant. Why is it that we can't take this time for ourselves until we're like being admitted for exhaustion or because we have kids? Like you don't need that excuse. She just was like, these 4 days work for my life. And I feel like millennials actually know something we don't. I remember when I first started working in TV in 95, and I used to like sort of my bragging point was, oh, if you ask me to jump, I don't say how high, I'm already jumping.
Right.
And it was like, I remember clocking literally like 118 hours one week because of like overlapping shifts and different jobs. I literally would do 3 different roles at the same company and get 3 different pay rates. And I mean, it was crazy. And so I was all about that. And they're just like, seems like a lot of work. I'm not going to do that. And so is it entitlement or do they have the secret?
Well, some of them are entitled for sure. Some of them tell me that they want to leave before their boss goes, which is just if the boss lets you go, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you can't just walk out the door and have the boss be like, hello, where did you go?
Right.
And some of them think that they can, or they don't understand why they have to be there before the boss arrives, or why they have to go get the boss lunch. I literally had a millennial say to me not that long ago, do you know that I had to go out and get my boss lunch? And they asked me to stop by at Trader Joe's to get them like some cold immunity vitamin thing. Now, it's probably not like under the HR policy that you do a Trader Joe's run for your boss,
right.
But he or she was clearly not feeling well. Like it was,
Yeah.
It was like a remedy.
Right.
So you don't want to stop and do that. And so to me, that's the entitled millennial attitude. But what I do think is right, and a lot of them are the way that you're describing, is they seem to have a better understanding about like limits and boundaries and work-life balance. And I think that that's something that, we're still working on.
We could benefit from that.
Yeah.
I remember interviewing, people who would fall under the millennial category and being asked one of the first questions, like, well, what are the hours? And in my head, in television, I'm like, they're all the hours. I mean, whatever the hours are that you need to work.
Right.
And they literally are like, want to punch in and punch out, like, and slide down a dinosaur like Fred Flintstone, like they want to know what the hours are and what their life is going to look like. Right. And it's fascinating.
Right.
So what can we learn from millennials? What can we Gen Xers and beyond?
I think we can learn that we need to really pay attention to ourselves. We are raised to be so other focused, so outwardly focused. And so, you and I were just talking about red flags with dating.
Yes.
and working too much, or not having time for yourself, or even giving too much to a friend or a partner or a kid. And it's because we've stopped listening to ourselves. We don't take the time to stop and tune in and say, like, how am I feeling and how am I doing? And that's one of the things that I recommend people do at least twice a day, morning and night, before you get out of bed. And when you get into bed, it's like, how am I? And I'm not going to lie, occasionally you might cry or get angry because you're going to get in touch with how you are. And
right.
You might be sad or mad or scared or whatever. And you might be happy. But if you find that something's not right, if there's some voice in you that's saying, you know what, I'm not happy, or this isn't right, or my friend is taking advantage of me, then it's your job to do something about it, because the only person that has your back 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is you.
Right. But I feel like we spend a lot of time pushing things down because we think we're supposed to just be okay with all of it. Like, I've talked to plenty of women. I always say, like, why do you wear struggle as such a badge of honor? You walk into a party and you say, oh, how are you? Oh, busy day. I did this. Well, I did this, and lifted a car on my back. Like, I mean, it's like a contest of who has it.
Why don't they have a badge? I want one. I want a badge that says, like, I struggled and I'm doing really well. Like, then at least it'll be worth it.
It's the new 40 Thrive badge. I'm on it.
Please.
But when did we decide that, like, the struggle and the suffering was actually sort of contributed to our value?
That's a really well said question. I think that you're right, that we feel valuable and important and satisfied and tired and depleted all in one. And I think that it is associated with value. And it's not just our own internal value, but, you know, you were describing it, that you had a job and you were like, I got it. You know, you say jump and I am already jumping, like that whole thing. And to me, we get rewards from other people saying, like, you do a lot, you're amazing. And it feels great to do a lot and be amazing as long as you are happy while you're doing all of that. And one of the things I think we all have to know is, what is your capacity? Like, I know I have a huge capacity to do a lot. I do TV, I have a private practice, I teach, I do corporate consulting. I mean,
you make many meals.
Yes, but my kids are now out. They're basically out. One of them's on her own and the other one is in college. So I'm kind of an empty nester. And so I needed to fill, you know, I like to be busy. But that's my capacity, and not every, and I still know where my limit is.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people aren't even aware of where their limit is anymore. So one of the things that my boyfriend always teases me about is I work a lot of nights because, you know, private practice, people have jobs, so they come to me in the evening. And then I'll have morning clients. So at some time between about, 4 and 6, I get in my pajamas. And I'm like watching Bravo or Netflix or like something. And he's like, what are you doing? Aren't you working later? I go, yes, I'm resting now, just like everyone else would be doing at 7 or 8 or 9.
Oh.
And so I've literally built it in. And then, little does everyone know, I'm revealing my secret. Right after I've watched my TV and had my little 2-hour midday break, I get dressed again, brush my hair. You know, it's like pajamas twice a day.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's how I wind down. I can't wind down if I'm in my work clothes. So I figured that out about myself.
That's brilliant. So we just have to find our little tricks and tips that work for us.
Yeah.
You know, but I think you're absolutely right in that there's so much power in knowing what your limits are, because one woman's limit may be like she's got to work 6 hours a day and, you know, and not work Wednesdays.
And that millennial that you talked about, her limit was, I need a midday day off.
Yeah. Midweek. Right.
Yeah.
And so
midweek.
Yeah. So I think that knowing our limits and respecting our limits.
And making everyone else do it too. Yes.
That's the $1 million challenge right there. Making other people do it. And I don't think it's not as hard for other people as we like to believe. We like to believe that if we set boundaries and people have to do things for themselves, that the whole world will crumble.
Correct. And I think some of it is because we're not practiced at saying no. We're not always nice about it. So you can very sweetly say, like, I'm really sorry, I'm so busy, I would if I could, but I can't. Or I'm really tired right now, I'm so sorry, but you're amazing anyway.
Yeah. Or I don't want to. Because we always try to soften it and make it like, I'm sorry, and you know, and not just say, no, that doesn't work for me.
No, that's totally true. And it doesn't work for me is another great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I used to quote Phoebe from Friends, and she'd say, oh, I would, but I don't want to.
But you said that with a smile.
You could use a smile, but you could let them know. So, all right, before we go, you know I ask all my guests, because you've heard it before, what does it mean to you to 40 Thrive?
You know, I told myself I was going to prepare for this question.
I love it when people don't.
But I decided not to.
Go with the gut.
To me, what it means is to sort of embrace this chapter of my life, that I'm not 20 anymore. And so I have some wrinkles in my forehead and I have to get my hair colored every 6 to 8 weeks. But to love and like myself anyway, and to be happy that I am, you know, the age I am, in the place that I am, and areas I'm not happy in, that I still have enough energy to, you know, figure them out.
Yeah, that's great, because I think, you know, happiness to me, and you're the therapist, so you know better, but happiness to me is being grateful for where you are and having the ability to move in the direction where you want to be.
Amen. I totally agree. And I have this thing where I want to live the life I want, and I want everyone to live the life they want, whatever that is.
Yes.
And so why wouldn't you just keep working at it?
Yes. This is why I like over 40, because we have time, but not that much time that you can be lazy about it.
But I'm going to max it out. Whatever time I have, I got to get it done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stacy, thank you so much. I love having you on.
Thank you.
We have to do it again.
Okay,
for
we
sure.
will.
Okay.
We will, for sure.
Thank you so much, Stacy. She is like having a really, really smart best friend, isn't she? And thank you to you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, there are 3 things you can do that will make all the difference in the world. Number 1, subscribe. It is literally one simple button and will allow the show to automatically be updated on your favorite podcast app. Number 2, share it with a friend. You know the one. She needs this episode. And to make it easier for you, just share the web link at 40thrive.com/episode 34. And number 3, rate and review. Apple Podcasts and all the other apps are all about these confusing algorithms. So the more activity they see on a podcast, the more they share it. So rate the podcast, write a quick review, share it, subscribe to it. It all helps. This is an absolute dream to bring you the 40 Thrive podcast every week. I want to hear what you want more of or less of, or just get your feedback. This show is all about bringing value into your life. So don't be shy. I want to hear all about it. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut.